My name is Elena, and I'm 31 years old. As the casket carrying my husband, Daniel, was lowered into the ground, I stood there trembling, utterly alone. Around me were only strangers, their pity-filled eyes burning into me. Not a single family member showed up. No parents, no brother, not even Lena, my so-called best friend since childhood. Why? Because they all chose to attend my brother Adrian's engagement party instead. Imagine that. While I was burying my husband, they were raising champagne glasses, celebrating. As the first shovel of dirt struck Daniel's coffin, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother lit up the screen. We need to talk. Now. Beneath it, 22 missed calls. If you were in my place, what would you do? If you're watching this, don't forget to like and subscribe, because what I'm about to share is the story of how I found strength when everyone I loved abandoned me. Daniel and I first crossed paths back in college. During my sophomore year, he accidentally bumped into me at the campus library, sending my pile of psychology textbooks flying across the floor. Instead of just mumbling an apology and hurrying off, he crouched down, helped me gather every single book, and then smiled nervously as he said, "At least let me buy you a coffee to make up for this mess." That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a late-night movie. And before I knew it, that awkward little accident grew into a love story that lasted through 6 beautiful years of marriage. But make no mistake, ours was never an easy road. From the very beginning, my family made it clear they didn't approve of Daniel. He came from a working-class family. His dad was a mechanic, his mom a nurse. Honest, humble, hard-working people who gave Daniel strong values and a relentless work ethic. To my parents, though, it was as if he came from another world. "You could do so much better, Elena," my mother would sneer whenever Daniel's name came up. "Think about your future. He'll never give you the lifestyle you deserve." My father didn't even bother sugarcoating his disdain. "That boy has nothing to offer you. No wealth, no connections, nothing but debt. Why chain yourself to him?" But to me, Daniel had everything that mattered. He was brilliant, finishing his engineering degree with honors while holding down part-time jobs to cover his expenses. He was compassionate, spending weekends volunteering at the local animal shelter. And above all, he loved me unconditionally, lifting me up, never once trying to change who I was. We paid for our own wedding, refusing my parents' money because we knew it would come with strings. It was small but heartfelt. Daniel's side beamed with pride while mine, well, they sat stiff and judgmental, barely disguising their disapproval. My brother Adrian cracked smug jokes about the budget catering. Lena, my maid of honor, drifted between me and Adrian's table, clearly leaning toward him. But at the time, I was just grateful she hadn't abandoned me completely. Our married life was simple, but happy. We bought a modest apartment, built a rhythm together. I worked as a marketing assistant, Daniel as a project engineer for a renewable energy firm. We dreamed of children someday, a house with a yard, maybe a dog. Ordinary dreams. But to us, extraordinary because they were ours. The contrast with my family couldn't have been sharper. At every holiday, my choices were mocked. My apartment too small, Daniel's career not flashy enough, our timeline for kids constantly questioned. Meanwhile, Adrian basked in endless praise. His high-paying law job, his glittering social circle, his glamorous partners. "When will you give us grandchildren, Elena?" My mother would press, sighing dramatically. But minutes later, she turned to Adrian and coo, "Don't rush, sweetheart. Focus on your career. Children can wait." The double standard was blatant, but I had learned to swallow it. Daniel's hand squeezing mine under the table reminded me I wasn't alone. And then, 6 months ago, everything collapsed. Daniel had been suffering from headaches and exhaustion. We chalked it up to stress, until the morning he collapsed mid-run. The diagnosis was brutal. Stage 4 brain cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months to a year, with treatment. I remember calling my parents, choking back sobs as I told them. My mother's response? "Oh, that's unfortunate," she said flatly, her voice dripping with the kind of shallow concern you give a neighbor's dog. "But are you sure? Doctors exaggerate. Did you even get a second opinion?" I whispered through tears. "We saw 3 specialists. They all said the same thing, and all I heard on the other end was silence." When I finally reached for my phone, hoping for a lifeline, it felt like everyone else had already decided what mattered most. "Don't worry, these things work themselves out." "Stay positive," my mother said, breezy and distant. Then, as if on cue, she added, "Oh. And Rachel told us she thinks her boyfriend might propose soon. We might be planning a wedding." She'd hung up before the words, before Daniel's diagnosis, had a chance to land. The call pivoted instantly to Rachel's upcoming celebrations, as if the man dying in the next room were background noise. I felt hollow, but by then I wasn't surprised. At first, Jessica's reaction had felt real. Shock, tears, frantic promises to help. But promises turned into polite excuses. Week after week, as Daniel started aggressive treatment, the visits dwindled. Work deadlines, family obligations, mysterious health issues. Every text sounded sincere until it didn't. "I'll come this weekend," Jessica would type, then cancel at the last minute. Meanwhile, Daniel fought like a warrior. Radiation left him violently ill. Chemo stole his hair and 20 pounds from an already thin frame. I took family medical leave and watched our savings melt away as I became his primary carer. Administering medication, managing bland, careful meals, holding a basin when nausea won. I tried to be more than a nurse. I tried to be his wife. I researched treatments until my eyes blurred. I called specialists at impossible hours. I learned to read every change in his breathing. My family, the ones who'd promised support, stayed comfortably distant. My texts became short updates, their replies shorter. Rachel never once visited. My parents dropped by for 30 awkward minutes after being pressured, then left looking relieved, as if they'd done their duty. Jessica came twice, both visits under an hour. She hovered at the doorway, visibly uncomfortable with the machines and the smells of illness. "People show up differently in crisis," Daniel whispered one night as I sobbed beside his bed. Even while he was slipping away, he made excuses for the people who should have been here. His own friends came nearly every day. His parents moved to our city temporarily, taking shifts so I could sleep for a few hours. The contrast between his circle and mine was a chasm. Then, just as Daniel's decline quickened, my family announced something else. Rachel's engagement. My mother called, effusive and bright. "We're planning the most beautiful engagement party. The country club agreed to host. Rachel wants you to be a bridesmaid, of course." When I asked when, she said, 3 weeks from Saturday. We want the weather to be perfect for photos." My stomach dropped. I told her the doctors were preparing us for the end. Daniel might only have weeks. A long pregnant silence. "Your sister is only going to get engaged once," she said finally. "Surely Daniel would understand if you took one evening." "He's dying," I said. "My husband is dying." "We'll miss you at the party then," she answered. "I'll tell Rachel you send your congratulations." The engagement party would be the very weekend the doctors said I should be ready to say goodbye. How do you choose between grief and a dress fitting? The experimental treatment we'd clung to shattered our last hopes. It triggered a seizure that landed Daniel back in the hospital for a week. After stabilizing him, the oncologist pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," Dr. Patterson said, her voice small with regret. "We're out of medical options. Our focus now is comfort. You should consider hospice." "Hospice," I repeated, the word like a cold stone settling in my chest. "The moment you stop fighting and begin the goodbye." That night I slept in a stiff recliner beside him, listening to the tiny rise and fall of his chest, memorizing the pattern as if it could be replayed later. His hand, once strong, felt like fragile porcelain under mine. For brief breaths in the night, the lines of pain around his mouth softened, and he looked like himself again. Our savings were gone. Bills kept stacking despite insurance. I'd drained what we had to be by his side. Daniel's parents helped what they could, but they were retired and limited. Swallowing my pride, I texted my father to ask for help. "We're a bit stretched right now with Rachel's engagement party," he replied. "Maybe next month we can look at our budget." Next month. The month they thought I could wait while my husband's life slipped away. Sleep became a stranger. When I did sleep, it was fractured and shallow. Days blurred into nights of hospital coffee, vending machine granola bars, and the sterile hum of monitors. My clothes hung loose. My reflection was a ghost. I kept sending updates, desperate to pierce their indifference. Moved to hospice. Could be days. Please come. Prayers. Photos of the ring. 6 carats, my mother gushed. And, "So sorry, we're swamped with party plans." Replaced real presents. Jessica texted about helping with planning. "Totally swamped. We'll try to visit soon." No one came. Daniel never flailed. He asked for small rebellions, chocolate milkshakes smuggled against orders, the comfort of a foolish treat. He worried about me more than himself. "Promise me you'll take care of yourself," he said in a lucid moment I will replay forever. "Find joy again. Don't let this break you." I promised him the impossible. The night before Rachel's party, his breathing changed. The hospice nurse adjusted his morphine and told me gently that these signs often mean the end is near. I called my mother, voice raw. "I think it's tonight or tomorrow. Please, I need you here." "We have guests arriving for the party," she sighed. "Rachel would be devastated if we're not here to greet them." "My husband is dying," I shouted, startling the nurse. "Lower your voice," my mother scolded. "You're being dramatic." I tried Jessica. "I can't do this alone," I begged. She was at the salon with Rachel getting their hair done. "I promised her weeks ago I'd help with preparations," she said apologetically. Daniel died at 3:27 a.m., his parents and I holding his hands. He went peacefully. The morphine kept him comfortable. His last lucid words to me were, "Thank you for loving me." I sat with him until dawn, numb and unable to fold that final reality into my life. The person who'd been my center was gone. Daniel's parents held me like I was the last piece of sanity left, their grief deep and steady, older hands knowing how to shoulder sorrow without collapsing. They helped me make the calls to the funeral home we'd reluctantly picked weeks earlier, and stood by as the staff prepared to take Daniel's body, steadying me when my knees threatened to fold. When dawn came and the world softened into gray, I checked my phone. Nothing from my family, probably still asleep, getting dressed for Adrian's big day, I thought numbly. I put a short message in our family group. Daniel passed a few hours ago. Funeral arrangements to follow. My father was the first to reply, "Sorry for your loss. We will be thinking of you today. Not will come over, not what can we do. Just a polite distance wrapped as sympathy." My mother's response read like schedule logistics. "Such sad news. Let us know about the funeral. Busy day ahead with party preparations." Adrian didn't even bother to reply. Lena sent a private message. "Oh my God, Elena, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over?" Before I could answer, another ping. "Actually, I promised Adrian I'd help decorate this morning. Can I stop by after the party tonight?" I didn't respond. Words felt useless. The next 2 days blurred into a haze of impossible decisions. Daniel and I had talked about his wishes during a lucid afternoon weeks earlier. Something simple. Cremation, a brief service, his favorite songs, no overt religiosity. He wanted me to scatter some of his ashes at Lake Michigan where we'd celebrated our first anniversary. Each choice at the funeral home felt like carving a permanent notch into my heart. Casket or container, funeral pamphlet, obituary copy. The director was gentle but professional. Grief makes paperwork feel obscene. Daniel's parents did everything they could, quietly shouldering details and respecting that the final decisions were mine. I picked a modest wooden casket for the viewing, a blue ceramic urn that reminded me of his eyes, and wrote an obituary that still felt embarrassingly small next to the life it tried to describe. We set the funeral for Tuesday, 3 days after his death, a respectful gap after Adrian's engagement party on Saturday. Surely, I told myself, once the party noise faded, they would show up. I made the funeral public. A Facebook event, group texts, emails with a map to the funeral home. The replies arrived like cold raindrops. "We'll try our best to be there," my mother wrote. "Adrian is exhausted from the party, but we know this is important." My father promised to check his calendar. Adrian sent a single thumbs-up emoji. Lena offered to definitely be there early to help set up, and to bring coffee. It was maddening. A man I'd loved for years was gone at 34, and their chief concern had been whose turn to be tired. On Monday, I laid out the suit Daniel had worn to our wedding, the blue one that had fit him like it was made for him. My fingers remembered the shape of him. My heart remembered how he'd teared up when I walked down the aisle. That evening, Lena called, voice wobbly. "I'm so sorry. The party was crazy. I feel awful I couldn't be there. I'll be at the funeral first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to come over tonight? Wine?" "No," I said. My voice felt hollow. "I need to be alone." She promised to be at 8 a.m. sharp with coffee. For the first time in days, a fragile thread of comfort returned. At least one person from my old life would be at my side. Tuesday arrived in a cold, steady drizzle, the kind of weather that matches the shape of some grief. I dressed without thinking, applied the smallest amount of makeup, and drove to the funeral home. Daniel's mother hugged me as if she could fuse me back together. "We are here for you, sweetheart," she murmured. I checked my phone. 8:15 a.m. No Lena. No messages from my family. I texted, "Are you on your way?" 8:30, she answered. The funeral director came over with gentle eyes. "Mrs. Rivera, would you like a private moment with your husband before guests arrive?" he asked. I nodded and followed him into the room where Daniel lay. Flowers filled the space, mostly from colleagues and friends. A large, stately arrangement from his parents. A small bouquet I had chosen myself, white roses and forget-me-nots, his favorites. Not a single card from my side of the family. By 9:01, guests began to arrive. Daniel's co-workers, his college roommate who'd flown in from Seattle, neighbors, people whose grief felt immediate and real. They spoke with a warmth that sometimes made me smile between the tears. At 9:30, my phone was still quiet. At 10:00, the service began. I sat between Daniel's parents in the front row, acutely aware of the empty seats reserved for my family. As friends recalled his kindness, his intellect, his stubborn dedication to renewable projects that mattered, I listened for my own family's footsteps and heard nothing. When my turn came to speak, my throat nearly closed. Standing there among Daniel's people, the ones who had loved and supported him, the absence of my own felt like a physical wound. But I had promised him strength. I read the words I'd written about the man who taught me the meaning of unconditional love, and tried to keep my voice steady. As the service closed, my phone buzzed. A social post. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. There it was. Photos from Adrian's engagement party. Laughter, glasses raised. Adrian and his fiancée smiling wide. My parents posed proudly beside them. Lena lifted a champagne flute in mid-toast. The images landed like a sucker punch. They were celebrating, dressed in their finery, while my husband lay in a chapel nearby. To them, perhaps nothing else had mattered. To me, it was all that did. The timestamp on the photos didn't say Saturday. It said yesterday. Their celebration had stretched into another day. While I'd been choosing Daniel's urn, they'd been brunching at an upscale hotel. While I'd been struggling to write an obituary, they'd been popping champagne. We moved to the cemetery in a small, quiet procession. As the casket slid into the earth, I stood at the edge alone. Daniel's parents stepped back just enough to give me a private moment. Rain fell soft and cold against my cheeks. I leaned close and whispered the line I'd said every night for 5 years. I love you more than yesterday, less than tomorrow. The first shovel of dirt landed on the lid. My phone lit up. A message from my mother. We need to talk now. I glanced down. 22 missed calls from Mom, Dad, Adrian, Lena, all within the last hour. I turned the device off and watched them lower him. When I came back to an empty apartment, the quiet felt like another loss. Daniel's parents offered to stay, but I needed the grief to be mine for a while. I wandered through the rooms like a ghost, touching his sweater, pressing my face into his pillow to catch whatever trace of him remained. When I finally powered the phone up, it exploded with notifications. I started with my mother's texts. Elena, we are so sorry we couldn't make it to the funeral. Adrian wasn't feeling well after the party. Call us when you can. We're worried about you. We feel terrible. My father's messages read the same. Vague excuses wrapped in half apologies. We couldn't leave the post-engagement brunch early. The guests were family. Lena's messages poured in, increasingly frantic. I overslept after the party. Are you getting these? I know you must hate me. I have no excuse. I'll come over later. Please let me explain. Adrian sent a single line. Sorry about Daniel. I was really busy with engagement stuff. Hope the funeral went okay. There were no words that could fix it. I set the phone down and made tea, too exhausted to answer. Then an email from Timothy arrived. Subject line, you should see this. His note was short. I happened to be at the Grand Hotel for a business lunch yesterday. Your family was there celebrating Adrian's engagement. Thought you should know what was said. I'm so sorry, Elena. My hands trembled as I opened the attachment. The clip showed the hotel's terrace. Flowers, balloons, a long table. My family sat together, champagne in hand. Bradford, Adrian's fiancé, raised a glass and gave a toast. The camera was distant, but the audio was clear enough. Bradford finished and Adrian stood, a little unsteady. I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate us. Adrian slurred, smiling. Especially my parents who put this whole thing together despite Elena's drama. Laughter rippled around the table. Seriously, Na always had some crisis. First, marrying that nobody engineer against everyone's advice. Now making his illness the center of attention during my engagement. My mother patted Adrian's arm but didn't object. My father nodded. Lena laughed and clinked glasses with them. I felt sick. They hadn't merely missed the funeral out of poor planning. They'd kept the party going and, worse, were mocking my grief. I scrolled through my texts with Lena and replayed the timeline. 3 weeks earlier, she'd asked about Daniel's prognosis. I'd told her honestly. Doctors said he might pass in days. The very next day, Adrian announced a party date that fell squarely inside that window. It wasn't a coincidence. It was deliberate. I traced back further messages. Years of small dismissals, of my successes minimized, and Adrian's choices celebrated. The pattern finally read like a sentence. I had been consistently sidelined. Daniel had seen it sooner than I did. They don't treat you with basic respect. He'd told me in quieter moments, and I'd made excuses. There was no more room for excuses now. As night fell, another message from my mother arrived. Your father and I want to discuss the family trust with you. We're making some changes and need your signature. Can you come by tomorrow? My stomach dropped. I called Susan, a colleague who'd become a friend during Daniel's illness. She'd been at the funeral that morning. Her husband was an estate attorney. Do not sign anything without reading it carefully, Elena, Susan said, voice suddenly sharp. Especially not while you're grieving. Get it to a lawyer first. Don't let them rush you. Her words landed like a life preserver. Betrayal and grief had become tangled now with something sharper. The fear that, even as I buried the man I loved, someone might use my vulnerability for gain. Do you want Richard to look at it for you? Would he mind? I asked Susan nervously. Not at all, she said. He always tells his clients, grief and legal documents are a dangerous combination. Before I could reply, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Lena, clutching flowers and a bottle of wine. Someone's here. I'll call you back, I told Susan, hanging up. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but some part of me wanted confrontation, needed it. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Lena's mascara was smudged, her eyes puffy. Elena, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. Explain what? That you chose champagne over standing by me at Daniel's funeral? That you laughed while Adrian mocked my dying husband? Her face drained of color. What are you talking about? I saw the video. From the brunch. I heard you. That was... She stammered. I was just... playing along. You know how Adrian gets if you don't side with him. No, I said coldly. I don't know. Because I don't betray people I love just to stay in someone's good graces. Her expression hardened, eyes flashing with something ugly. You've always been so judgmental, Elena, acting perfect. Acting like a martyr. Adrian's right. You really do make everything about you. My husband died, I shouted, not caring if the whole neighborhood heard. He died, and not one of you cared enough to show up for me. Not one. We cared, she faltered. You just had more important things to do. Drinking champagne, mocking my grief. Elle, please. We've been friends for 20 years. Don't throw that away! You threw it away! Not me. My voice was calm now, final. Please leave. Her last attempt came soft, desperate. Your family is worried about you. They sent me to bring you home. I am home, I whispered. And they're not my family anymore. Neither are you. I closed the door on her protests and slid down against it, sobs shaking my body. The last illusion had shattered. I wasn't just grieving my husband. I was grieving the family and friendships I'd never truly had. That night was darker than the night Daniel died. Because then, I had still believed there were people I could lean on. Now I knew the truth. There was no one. The next morning, I woke to a text from my father. We're coming over at 11. We need to resolve this situation. I didn't respond. But I knew they'd come regardless. At 10:45, I called Richard, who had reviewed the documents my parents had conveniently emailed overnight. Elena, I'm glad you had me look at this, he said gravely. The amendment removes you from the family trust completely. Your share would transfer entirely to Adrian. They need your signature because the original trust guaranteed equal distribution. They want you to sign away your inheritance the day after your husband's funeral. I felt sick. The depths of their callousness still surprise me. Don't sign. And from here on, get your own lawyer. Don't handle any financial matter with them alone. At exactly 11:00, the doorbell rang. Through the camera, I saw my parents, Adrian and Lena. I opened the door. Finally, my mother said, brushing past me into the living room. We've been trying to reach you for days. 24 hours, I corrected coldly. Daniel's been dead for exactly 24 hours. Don't be melodramatic. Adrian rolled his eyes, dropping onto my couch. He was sick for months. You had plenty of time to prepare. My father looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Lena hovered near the door, staring at the floor. Why are you here? I asked, standing while they made themselves comfortable. We're worried about you, my mother said, her expression carefully arranged. You shouldn't isolate yourself. Come stay with us. And, my father added, patting his briefcase, We just need to update some family business. Paperwork. The trust that would disinherit me, I said calmly. Their faces snapped to shock. How did you— Those are private. My father sputtered. Yes, private documents about my inheritance, I said evenly. Did you really think I'd sign them without reading? Without legal advice? You had no right to show those to an outsider. My mother snapped. Like you had no right to skip my husband's funeral for a party. The silence was heavy, brittle. Adrian broke it with a scoff. Are we still on that? It wasn't just a party. It was my engagement, a once-in-a-lifetime event. And Daniel's funeral wasn't? People die every day. Adrian shrugged. I'll only get engaged once. Statistically speaking, with your track record, you'll probably get engaged several times, I said flatly. Adrian's face turned crimson. How dare you! I saw the video, I cut in. I heard every word you said about Daniel and me. My mother paled. What video? I played it. Their smirks, their laughter, their words filled my living room. When it ended, no one spoke for a long moment. That was out of context, my father finally muttered. What context makes mocking my dying husband acceptable? Elena, we didn't mean— Lena tried. Yes, you did. All of you. This is who you really are, who you've always been. I turned to my laptop. A folder was already open. I've been thinking a lot since Daniel got sick. About patterns. About how I've been treated compared to Adrian. I turned the screen toward them. 28 years of birthdays, Christmases, school events. Times you praised him and dismissed me. Times you rewarded him and ignored me. Every single one of them. This is ridiculous, my mother scoffed. You sound like a child keeping score. No, I said, my voice steady. I sound like someone who finally sees the truth. You never loved me. Not the way you love him. I was always an afterthought. An obligation. Now I know I was never loved at all. Of course we love you, my father insisted. We're here, aren't we? You're here with paperwork to cut me out of the trust, I said. The day after my husband's funeral. That's not love. Adrian stood, irritation flashing in his eyes. Can we just get this over with? Elena, sign the papers. It's not like you even need the money, not with Daniel's life insurance, Rachel said casually, her words slicing deeper than a knife. Even my parents looked startled at her cruelty. Get out, I whispered, my voice trembling but sharp. Nora, don't be unreasonable, my mother began, her tone coated with false calm. Get out, I exploded. Years of buried rage breaking free. I've been reasonable my entire life. I've accepted being second best, being ignored, being dismissed. No more. I walked to the door and held it open. From this moment forward, I have no family, no parents, no sister, no friend named Jessica. You're all strangers to me now. You can't be serious, my father sputtered. Family doesn't do what you did. Family shows up. Family supports through grief. Family loves unconditionally. You failed on every count. Jessica's face was streaked with tears as she stepped closer. Nora, please. I know I failed you, but 20 years of friendship must mean something. It meant nothing to you when you chose champagne over compassion, when you laughed at my pain, when you called me dramatic for grieving the man I loved. There's nothing left to save. Leave. One by one they filed out. My parents stunned, Rachel seething, Jessica broken. As my mother passed, she gripped my arm. You'll regret this, she hissed. When your grief clears, you'll need us. I gently pulled her hand away. No, Elizabeth, I won't. Calling her by her first name was the final cut. Her face faltered, then hardened. Without another word, she walked to the car. When I shut the door, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself. Daniel would have been proud. That night, I called Dr. Laurel Anderson, a therapist specializing in grief and family trauma. I also reached out to Susan and Richard, thanking them for their guidance. Then I began searching for widow support groups. A new life was starting, one I hadn't asked for, but one I could shape for myself. The weeks that followed were both brutal and strangely freeing. Grief hit me in waves. I broke down in the grocery store when I saw Daniel's favorite cereal. I cried folding his shirts that still carried his scent. Dr. Anderson explained what I was experiencing. Complex grief. 2 devastating losses at once. My husband and my family. She called it disenfranchised grief. The kind of pain that isn't acknowledged by the very people who should be your support system. And that betrayal cut deeper than I had ever thought possible. 3 weeks after Daniel's funeral, I walked into my first widow's support group. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Saying out loud that I belonged there made his death undeniable. There were 8 women, ranging from their 20s to their 70s. What connected us wasn't age, it was pain. The pain of watching someone you love slip away. The loneliness of forms, lawyers, insurance calls. The cruel, well-meaning questions. Are you dating again? Are you over it yet? That's where I met Sarah, 36, widowed after her husband's sudden heart attack. Her sharp humor and practical wisdom cut through my fog. For 2 months I lived in Steve's bathrobe and ate cereal for dinner. She told me over coffee. Then one day I realized Steve would have been furious if I gave up. So I made a rule. Do one grown-up thing every day. Shower. Cook a meal. Take a walk. Just one thing. I adopted her rule. Some days that one thing was all I could manage. Other days I surprised myself by doing more. I eased back into work part-time, thanks to a compassionate boss who gave me flexible hours. Daniel's parents became my lifeline. His mother, Sharon, sent care packages filled with cookies and silly trinkets to make me laugh. His father helped me with paperwork and house repairs. You'll always be our daughter, Sharon told me once. That doesn't change because Daniel is gone. Their love stood in painful contrast to my own family's betrayal. My parents left voicemails urging healing and moving forward. Rachel texted once, "You're being ridiculous. Call Mom and Dad and apologize." Jessica was more persistent. Letters, emails, messages begging for forgiveness. I read them all, but felt only a hollow ache. Dr. Anderson reminded me, setting boundaries isn't holding grudges. It's self-protection from people who've proven they can't be trusted with your heart. 4 months after Daniel's death, I made a hard choice. Selling our apartment. Every corner echoed with memories. I moved across town, near a quiet park Daniel and I used to walk through. It wasn't the life I wanted. But for the first time, it was mine. The day I began packing up our bedroom, I found a sealed envelope tucked inside Daniel's nightstand. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing a letter he had written in his final weeks, back when he still had the strength to hold a pen. "My dearest Nora," it began. "If you are reading this, I am gone, and you are facing life without me. I am so sorry to leave you. Loving you has been the greatest joy and privilege of my life." His words stretched across 3 pages. Memories of our happiest moments. Encouragement to find joy again. And most of all, his unshakable belief in me. "You are stronger than you know," he wrote. "I have watched you bend but never break under the weight of your family's indifference. Now I hope you will use that strength for yourself, not just to endure, but to thrive. Build a life filled with people who see your beautiful heart the way I always have." I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed. But beneath the grief was a strange comfort. He was still guiding me, still loving me, still reminding me who I was. That letter became my talisman. I carried it to therapy sessions, to support group meetings, on the days when grief threatened to pull me under. Daniel's faith in me became the foundation on which I rebuilt my life. 6 months after losing him, I began volunteering at the hospital where he had received treatment. Twice a week I sat with patients during chemotherapy, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting quietly so they weren't alone. At first, it was unbearably painful, reopening wounds I thought had begun to scar, but slowly it became healing. Channeling my loss into compassion gave my pain a purpose. Through that program, I met Elaine and Frank, a couple in their 60s who had lost their only son to cancer years earlier. They folded me into their lives, inviting me to Sunday dinners, treating me with the kind of unconditional affection I'd never known from my own parents. Grief connects people in strange ways, Elaine said one evening, as we washed dishes together. It's like a club no one wants to join, but once you're in, you find family you never expected. Around the same time, I discovered I had a voice for writing about grief. What started as private journal entries turned into blog posts. To my surprise, strangers began reaching out, people who saw their own struggles in my words. A small community formed, one that gave me connection and purpose when I needed it most. When the first anniversary of Daniel's death arrived, I invited his parents to join me in honoring him. Together, we drove to Lake Michigan to scatter some of his ashes, just as he had requested. The sky was bright, the water a dazzling blue that mirrored the urn I had chosen. He would have loved this day, his father said, wrapping an arm around my shoulders as the ashes drifted into the waves. And he would have been proud of you, Sharon whispered, of how you've carried on. I couldn't answer past the lump in my throat, but for the first time, my grief felt bearable. Not gone, it would never be gone, but woven into me, part of my fabric instead of consuming it whole. That same evening, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, "Family emergency." It was from Elizabeth. "Your father has had a heart attack. Rachel's wedding is postponed. We need your help with medical bills. Please call." My hand hovered over the delete button. Then curiosity got the better of me. A quick search confirmed my father had indeed suffered a heart attack, but the report suggested it was mild. Another article revealed Rachel's fiancé had called off their engagement amid rumors of fraud at his law firm. For a flicker of a moment, I considered responding. Then I remembered the video of them mocking Daniel's illness, their absence at his funeral, their attempt to strip me from the family trust. Instead of calling, I researched financial assistance programs and forwarded the links to my mother without a single word. Jessica had stopped reaching out months ago, but Sarah ran into her at a cafe one morning and later told me, "She asked about you. Said she misses you but understands. She and Rachel had a falling out." I only nodded, feeling a faint pang of sadness, but no desire to go back. Some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. As the seasons turned, so did I. The woman who stood at her husband's grave, shattered and alone, was still part of me. But she no longer defined me. I was building something Daniel would be proud of, surrounded by people who valued me as I was. At night, I still spoke to him. Told him about my day, about the new people in my life, about the small victories, and in my heart, I could still hear his laughter, his encouragement, his love. "You were right," I whispered to his photo one evening. "I'm stronger than I ever knew." On the second anniversary of his death, I took the day off work and drove to the cemetery. His headstone was simple, elegant, just as he'd wanted. I placed fresh flowers at its base and sat on the bench I had placed there. 2 years, love," I said softly. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like another life." So much had changed since that rainy morning when I stood alone as they lowered Daniel's casket. Now, I lived in a small but cozy house with a garden where I grew vegetables and flowers, life springing up where I once thought nothing could. I had been promoted at work and had even started teaching a grief support workshop at the community center. I had friends who called just to check in, who remembered Daniel's birthday and our anniversary, who understood that grief was a permanent part of me, but not the whole of me. For 2 years, I hadn't spoken to my parents or to Rachel. My mother still sent the occasional email, usually when they needed something, but I no longer felt guilty for maintaining my distance. The family that abandoned me when I needed them most had lost the right to be in my life. As I sat by Daniel's grave reflecting, I noticed a familiar figure approaching along the path, Jessica. She looked nervous, clutching a small bouquet of flowers. She froze when she saw me, clearly unsure if she should walk closer or retreat. "I can come back later," she said softly. "It's okay," I replied, surprising even myself. "You can put those down." She placed her flowers beside mine and stood awkwardly for a moment. Then, almost in a whisper, she admitted, "I come here every year. I didn't expect to see you today. You visit Daniel's grave?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Jessica nodded. "I know it doesn't make up for missing the funeral. Nothing could. But I wanted to pay my respects, to acknowledge him properly, and to remind myself of the worst mistake I ever made." For the first time in years, I really looked at her. The polished, always composed Jessica I once knew had been replaced by someone quieter, more real. "How have you been?" I asked, keeping the question light. "Different," she said. "Rachel and I had a huge falling out after everything. She expected me to take her side completely, but I couldn't anymore. It made me realize how toxic things had become between us." As for her engagement, Jessica sighed. Bradford's firm got caught up in fraud allegations. He dumped her when things got messy. He was only using her for family connections anyway. "And my parents?" I asked, surprised by my own curiosity. "Your dad recovered from the heart attack," she answered, "but they had to sell their big house. Downsizing was the only option with the medical bills. They're not speaking to me either, because I refused to cut Rachel off completely." We sat in silence, the weight of our shared history pressing down. Finally, Jessica spoke, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Nora. Truly, deeply sorry. Not just for missing the funeral, but for years of being the wrong kind of friend. For letting Rachel's influence blind me to what really mattered. Losing your friendship has been the hardest consequence of my choices." I studied her face, and for the first time in years, saw sincerity. "Thank you for saying that," I whispered. "I don't expect forgiveness, or for things to go back the way they were. I just needed you to know that I regret it all." We talked for nearly an hour, catching up, acknowledging the pain, but also recognizing the possibility of change. She told me she had been in therapy too, untangling her own family issues and her need for constant approval. "Daniel would be amazed at the woman you've become," she said as we got ready to leave. "He always saw your strength, even when you couldn't." "He did," I agreed, resting my hand on his headstone. "He taught me what real love looks like, and his love gave me the courage to demand better from everyone else." We exchanged numbers before parting. No promises, just a door left slightly ajar after years of being locked shut. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at my home. Sarah and her new boyfriend, Elaine and Frank from my support group, and Susan and Richard, who had helped me in the darkest days, all sat around my table. Laughter filled the house, and in that warmth, I felt Daniel's presence. Later, after everyone left, I sat in the garden under the stars, reflecting on the journey of the past 2 years. I had lost my husband, lost my family of origin, endured betrayal and abandonment. I had felt pain I once thought impossible to survive. Yet here I was. Not just surviving, but building a life filled with meaning and connection. The greatest lesson I learned was that family isn't defined by blood. Family is made of the people who show up when you need them most. The ones who sit with you in your pain without trying to minimize it. The ones who celebrate your joys without jealousy or condition. I had also learned that boundaries are not selfish, they are essential. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Some relationships are too fractured to be repaired, and that is okay. Most importantly, I discovered my own resilience. The strength Daniel always saw in me had finally become visible to myself. His love was no longer a burden of grief, but a gift that still guided me forward. Looking up at the sky, I whispered, "Thank you for loving me, Daniel, for showing me what I deserve. I'm building a beautiful life, just like you wanted." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, wrapping me in something greater than myself. I wasn't alone. I would never truly be alone again. If you're watching this and struggling with toxic family ties or the weight of grief, please know that healing is possible. The path isn't straight, and it isn't easy, but you can build a life filled with authentic love and connection. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family who hurt you? How did you find the courage to put yourself first? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonates, please subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing. Remember, the family you choose can be even more meaningful than the family you were born into. Thank you for listening. I wish you strength on your journey,